Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Hugh, over to you.
Thank you, Alyssa, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Leading Through Uncertainty, Navigating Change Together. My name is Hugh Murphy, and I'm a Senior Vice President here at Leadership Connect, and I'm really excited to moderate this discussion today. We know the current government shutdown has paused progress, disrupted teams, and created uncertainty across the public sector. Everyone's navigating shifting timelines, limited information, and the challenges of keeping work moving. So in this 1 hour virtual session, today's goals are to bring together colleagues from government and industry to share what's working, what's been hard, and how we can move forward together. So we'll focus on things like resiliency and leading with steadiness in these uncertain times, communication and finding clarity when answers are limited, and purpose, really staying grounded in the mission. So before we get into it, just a few housekeeping notes to share with you all. As a reminder, Leadership Connect is registered with the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy and as a sponsor of continuing professional education on the National Registry of CPE sponsors. So if CPE credits are something you're interested in obtaining, please listen up. This webinar is good for one CPE in the information technology field of study. And so in order to receive credit, please ensure that you meet the attendance and participation requirements, which for this webinar, we'll be asking 3 polling questions. And if you want to receive credit, please answer all 3. Throughout the session, we encourage you to ask questions, engage with the speakers, and share your insights throughout. You'll see a Q&A link at the bottom, and again, feel free to ask questions along the way, and we'll try to get to them throughout. But now it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers. First, we have Matthew Chase, Executive Director for the National Association of Counties, David Angeletti, Vice President, Strategic Initiatives at McAllister Brown, and Lou Eichenbaum, Federal Chief Technology Officer at Color Tokens and former CISO for the U.S. Department of Interior. So, gentlemen, I'd love to give each of you a minute to introduce yourselves and maybe just tell us a little bit about your work. Maybe, Matt, we can start with you.
Great. Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Hugh, and to Leadership Connect for the opportunity to participate. As was introduced, my name is Matt Chase. I'm the CEO of the National Association of Counties. We are a trade group, if you will, for the 3,069 county governments across the country. Our members invest about $770 billion a year into local communities. I've got the honor of representing 40,000 locally elected officials and about 3.6 million county workers. Our membership and members employ about 2%, or 1 out of every 50 workers across the United States. And we touch just about every single federal department. And I'm sitting here today with 25 of our major urban county administrators talking about how to navigate the federal landscape. And so this is a timely discussion on leadership.
Great. Thanks, Matt. We'll try to get some real-time updates from you along the way here today. Dave, want to go next?
Sure. Thanks, Hugh. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. I appreciate it. I've got about 30 plus years of background, mostly in the defense industry, largely supporting small to medium-sized businesses as they try to figure out how to work with federal government. Done that through a number of consortia and other community-based initiatives throughout the defense industry. And happy to say that I'm leaning much more toward the R&D and innovation side of our defense industrial base, which keeps it interesting and probably explains the hairline. So I'm looking forward to being able to engage today with couple pieces of conventional wisdom, as it were, learned over the 3 decades of how does a small business get from this year to next year to the next decade. Thanks, Hugh.
Thanks, Dave. And as you can see, you're in familiar company with the hairlines here. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Lou.
Yes, thank you, Hugh. So I'm Lou Eichenbaum. I'm the federal CTO with Color Tokens. Full disclosure, I've only been in this role for 2 months. We do microsegmentation software to help organizations build out their zero trust architectures. Prior to joining Color Tokens. I worked for the Department of Interior for over 23 years, primarily in cybersecurity positions. My most recent position there was that of the CISO for the agency. I've also, prior to that, I was a Zero Trust Program Manager. I've been a CISO at some of our bureaus, such as Bureau of Land Management, Office of Surface Mining Reclamation and Enforcement, among many other things. One thing I can tell you in federal government that is constant is change. Every 4 years, we know there's going to be a change, and so we are used to it. This year, was a slightly more significant change than we're used to, so I'm certainly happy to share my thoughts and experiences with this group today.
Great. Thanks again, Lou, and welcome to all of you again. Yeah, let's start with that. Like, one of the topics we wanted to touch on today was resilience. And Lou, maybe I could start with you. Just, how do you stay grounded and kind of lead through all of these disruptions? Currently the shutdown, but there's obviously other budget pauses, leadership changes, et cetera. And as you said, it's not the first time, but definitely feels a little different this time. But how do you kind of stay grounded and steady through these changes?
Yeah, well, like I said, working in the government for over 20 years, you do know that every 4 years there's going to be a change in administration. Even if the president's reelected, you're going to have new leaders, new priorities that you need to focus on. So you try your best to plan for it. We knew change was coming. We saw, some of the things that we believed we needed to focus on. So we tried to prepare as best we could. But again, when change is, no one likes change. Let's face it, right? And no one likes uncertainty. So what is most important, I think, as a leadership team is to remain consistent in your approach, right? For us, it was, let's focus on the mission. What is it we do here at DOI, right? We deliver mission services to citizens. And if you worked at DOI for a number of years like I have, you believe in that mission and you want to deliver it. So even when there are challenging times where you don't know if you're going to be able to fund certain programs, you've lost federal employees and contractors who are supporting your programs, let's focus on what's important to us, the mission. Let's do the work we need to do. And as best you can as a leader, it's about being consistent, delivering that message. Don't change who you are, just, be yourself, show up every day, do your job and lead your team.
Great. Thanks, Lou. I don't know, maybe Dave, do you want to chime in? I think you might be on mute, Dave.
Get used to that too. That's not going to change. I'll start talking far before I realize no one can hear me. And there's at least one person in your audience who already knows that. So thanks for joining us, Aaron. So when I think about it, to be honest, and I think about some of the leaders I've worked under, the one thing I know I have respected and reacted to is when they act like they've been there before. And I don't mean to infer fake it till you make it. I mean, take the steps as a leader to emulate those things you value, and that just crescendos down the hallway. It really does. Your role is to show some pinpoint of light and hope for the people under your stead. And if you can't be that light, it really gets dim in the hallway, right? And it's even harder now, I think, when we have such a diverse and remote workforce, because there's this less continuity of communication, lesser feeling of community. So you have to work extra hard at that. That means more communication. If that means more communication, and as a leader, guess what? You better read. And I don't mean just the news. I mean, go to the sources of information, which is one of the reasons I was so thrilled when I saw Matt was going to be on our call today. Our professional associations are a hub of intelligence. You got to learn how to use that and pivot with it, right? At the same time, we live in a 24/7 news cycle. We live in a social media driven world. And so, when I can point to people like Tanya in the audience right now and say, thanks for reaching out through LinkedIn last night because you noticed you were going to be here today with us, I think that's great. You've got people who are already doing what they need to do and kind of leaning forward over their skis. I'd say that's probably one of my number one things.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, and
Matt.
Just to build on what David and Lou were saying, I think going back to your question, understanding what is the definition of resilience. And it's a word that I've been around for over 30 years. I remember when it wasn't used so common, but resilience is really about being prepared for shocks to the system and how do you mitigate to the best of your ability severe shocks whether it's a natural disaster or community level or financial. And it's having that mindset that there's just no such thing as status quo. And you're either going forwards or backwards. And as a leader, as an organization, even as just a member of society, you've got to be in that mindset. I think what is different today is the speed and scale of the change, whether it's political, whether it's new things like Gen AI or the next levels of AI, even beyond Gen AI. And so I think as a leader, it's really, we focus on our values and our value of what are our values, what do we stand for, and how are we adding value, in our case, to our member counties. But it's really important, I think, in today's world to build community, that it's so easy for our teams to get isolated, whether it's virtual working or hybrid working. You don't have that sense of community that maybe we had. For county officials, we've had a tough 5-6 year run because our members run public health. We run our nation's elections. So we've been dealing with crisis after crisis. A third of our members have a natural disaster every year that rises to the level of federal assistance. So between our emergency management work, our public health work, our elections work, and just everything else in between, it becomes overwhelming. And so to ground people back into the mission, the importance of excellence in public service, that at a time when government can be viewed as a dirty word, to remind people governments were created to bring order and provide public safety, public health, and just overall general welfare of our communities. And governments aren't nasty, they're not evil, and that we can really bring positivity to our communities.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. That's a great point. It was something I was going to ask you all, and you kind of touched on it, but when you think about some of the things you mentioned, you kind of, stress or maybe even you could go as far as, burnout for folks at some point becoming a risk. Like, are there signals you look for, or how do you make sure you kind of identify those before it becomes a bigger problem?
I'll jump in just because our organization actually has embraced something called mental health first aid, where we spend a lot of time on traditional first aid, but this is really around burnout and your mental health. And it's training your workforce through 60 to 90-minute trainings on how do you look out for each other around signals of burnout? How do you look at folks that might be in crisis? And quite honestly, the skills are really important. But as a leader, I think sending a signal to your team that you have empathy about the conditions that they're working in, that you're recognizing that we're not robots and that people do have breaking points. They do need time off. They do need balance with family, friends, and community. And so that's one tool that we've been using that it does cost money. There's no doubt about it. But it really has helped equip our team with how do you take care of yourself in a better way.
Yeah, I'll
Thanks,
jump
Matt.
in if that's okay, Hugh, because I really
Please.
like what Matt just said. And, at Interior earlier this year, we automatically lost a lot of people. A lot of people just left, and we had most of our senior leadership left, and we had people who were stepping into new roles. There were several people who now had to do multiple jobs that they didn't have to do before. They're stepping up, doing everything they can. And they're also working in an environment where they feel like if I don't show up every day and do my job, I may be on the chopping block, right? So giving that message to them that, look, it's okay to take care of your mental health is critically important. And as a leader, to me, it's about being honest with them, not sugarcoating it. Yeah, times are challenging right now. I don't know what the future may bring, but you're not going to be successful if you fry yourself and blow up here in the office, right? You're going to have to you need to take care of your mental health. And, again, as a leader, it's important to also at times just sit and listen to your employees. Honestly, I think during this whole change that I went through, I think 50% of my job, I think, was almost that of like a psychologist. It's just listening, letting them talk to you about their concerns, even if you have no answers for them, right? It's like, I get it. I'm with you. Hey, we're in this together. Let's support each other. So yeah, I think it's critically important to, during times of extreme challenge to make sure people, you're staying on top of their mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Lou. And Dave, I know like you work with a lot of small businesses that are already operating in many cases with very lean teams under high pressure. How do you kind of coach those folks and that are already stretched thin in a way?
It's funny, and I know this is going to shock people, but I haven't been like 25 in a couple years. But back when I clearly recall the onboarding process at the corporate level being an entirely different animal than what you see today. Today, it's here's your login, here's your laptop, make sure you sign into whatever system by X amount of time, blah, blah, blah. When I was coming up, you had 2 or 3 days of nothing but just getting oriented to the space, the environment, and the people with which you're going to interact. And we've kind of transcended now into this, place where we're in an environment where we're awash with just a slew of technology that is built to help humans. And we forget that last word, right? And so back to both what Matt and Lou were saying, first listen, but if you're in that leadership position, regardless of the size of your company, how you invite your new employees in is every bit as important as how you treat your senior employees, right? So everyone's got that value chain that they understand. And I often think about some of us at least are, I think, probably old enough to remember what was one of the most acclaimed political dramas on broadcast TV called West Wing, right? And I don't think there was a person on the planet who watched it who didn't want that president. But it wasn't just what he stood for; it was how he treated the people around him, and it just perpetrated throughout the office. And you look at that kind of environment, and you start to pick up on those signals where people are getting stressed out, and it's a difficult thing to handle when you're in those leadership positions because sometimes the truth will drive people out. But at the same time, by conveying that truth, you're doing that person a favor at a personal level, despite what it might do to your own company. Your company will survive. You'll find another person if that person feels they need to leave because they feel threatened or what have you. And look what we're dealing with now. Lou mentioned it at the top of the year. So many people lit out. They left other people either above or below them holding the bag. And now, not only did they have to double or triple down on their workload, now some of them are doing it without pay. That's a lot of stress, right? So it really comes down to how good are you at selling the mission and the need of your solution for that mission to whomever your customer base is, and building that level of value and trust in your leadership within your folks. So that's kind of where I guess I would loop it off.
Yeah, and Hugh, if I could just add one thing where
Sure.
going back to our values and our value, I think we're at a point in time in world history where norms are really important and really trying to instill norms when the outside world is against you. And when you think about things like media and social media, we've monetized outrage. Every time we swipe our finger, somebody's getting paid. And so people are being driven to have emotion because somebody is making money off of it. And we just remind our team to focus on retaining their critical thinking skills. And when you think about things like political propaganda, it's to exhaust your critical thinking, it's to stretch norms. And that bleeds into the workplace. It bleeds into our communities, it bleeds into our family conversations at the holidays. And so just reminding our folks to take their time to read. We have to work quickly, but remember to think and not become a robot, not fall prey to the latest news flash, and to really add value through critical thinking.
That's great, Matt. Thanks so much. And as I mentioned at the top of the hour, we have a few poll questions for the audience. I wanted to queue up the first one here. You can see the question: what's been the biggest challenge for your team during recent disruptions like the shutdowns or budget delays? Maintaining team morale, managing shifting timelines and priorities, communicating clearly with limited information, staying aligned to the mission, or something else. So I'd love to get some feedback from the audience here on those, and then we can maybe shift gears a little and like talk a little bit on one of these topics, which is communication, and how we go from there on that front. And we can maybe get started while we're waiting for everyone to enter their responses. We've already touched on a few things here and talked about, staying consistent and making sure we're, acting like we've been there before and things like that. Here we have the results. Maybe I'll just touch on those. Spread out a little bit, but certainly communication, managing shifting timelines and priorities, team morale, which we'd spent a bit talking about as well. So let's kind of touch on one of the top ones here, communication. So, kind of question for all of you, any of you, when these situations are evolving sometimes by the hour, what's the best strategy for communicating clearly and consistency? I don't know if anyone wants to jump in first.
I'll start off.
Okay, Dave.
Because while you were putting the poll up there, I got curious. I've not ever been one to be accused of not saying much. So I was thinking, I remember some loose quote about women using X amount more words a day than men do. I'm the anomaly there. And that's kind of the point. Even when I was a program manager at a young point in my career, I would constantly send messages out to my team, to my customer, to his team. I didn't care if they deleted it or not. It did a couple of things. One, it showed you were in touch with the now, number one. Number two, it invited participation and input from everyone involved in whatever the problem statement was you were looking to solve. And thirdly, it allowed people to recognize that you're approachable and that you can do little directional changes along the way. And that's what all of this takes. You're navigating an incredibly difficult time right now, whether you're looking at it from a shutdown standpoint, the fact that we're under no budget, the fact that no one knows which way strategies are going right now. Everyone's just kind of sitting in neutral at a red light waiting for the light to change. Maybe it changes to green, maybe it stays red. You don't know, but you better be ready. The only way you're going to be ready is by opening up those channels and really making sure you're getting all the input that you can get to make the decisions at the leadership level that are required.
That's great. Thanks, Dave. Lou, yeah, let's see. Off mute.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree with what Dave said. And I'm not surprised to see maintaining team morale as the number one on this list. And because that's certainly, the most difficult thing to do in times like this. One of the things that can help with that is communication. I think communicating, particularly in an environment where you probably don't have the information that everyone wants. That was a struggle I had for several months. People wanted to know about, am I going to have a job? What's net? Is my organization still going to exist? What's happening? And you don't know the answers to that. But I think what is important is that you continue to have regular conversations with your organization to say, look, I understand your concerns, but look, I understand your value as well. What you do is important. I value it, and whatever I can do to ensure that I am, consistently being an advocate for you and our team so that everyone understands the value you provide here, that's what I can do. But it's, I think just also giving them that opportunity to ask the questions and just giving them an opportunity to raise concerns, even if you don't have the answers. It's really important during this time. It's not going to fix the morale issue. It'll help a little bit, but it's something that has to be done. And the other thing I'll say is during this, be yourself. This is the other thing. It's like during times of challenges like this, I think consistency and how you perform is important, right? You've seen some managers, right, where they're in, they'll all of a sudden, they're normally more of a stoic leader, which is great. All of a sudden they want to be more touchy-feely it just doesn't feel authentic, right? Be yourself. People, your people want to see you be you. We need a leader that we know is there, is consistent in helping us get through this. And I think that's very important.
That's a great point. Matt, anything to add?
Yeah, I think what Lou said is just so important about the authenticity and it's okay to be vulnerable, to say, I just don't know at this point. And having empathy and vulnerability at this point is good. But bringing clear priorities is very important. Well, on your poll, I think what is really interesting about your poll is if you reversed it and you looked at the inverse, what are people least worried about is staying connected to the mission. So lead from the strength. If this is a public sector audience, work with your team to remind them not just of the mission, but how can you physically, literally connect them back to your end users? So if you're allowed, if you're interior, how do you go out into a national park or a Bureau of Land Management land and see the ranchers and farmers and others that are your constituents, if you will? And I think that's important. For our case, we're a national association. We're based in DC, but we also have county governments around the DMV area. So we get them on buses and we go out to see a 911 center. We go see a behavioral health clinic for folks that are really struggling with different either substance abuse or mental health. And we remind them that we're there to serve the community, and that re-energizes. Now, you can't do that every day and it doesn't always work, but it does bring back clarity of our priorities, and use that poll question to say, our strength is our mission. That's why people got into public service. And be creative. Maybe there's a new executive order, a new regulation, or a new policy directive that makes your job a little more challenging, but try and be creative to still do something that's aligned with your values and why you joined that department or that agency.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Matt. It's kind of like, how do you really need to try to balance, like, being honest about the uncertainty of the current situation while still keeping people, sort of focused, motivated on the task at hand in a way.
Yeah, and if I could just add, because again, 100% agree with Matt, because I mean, that was one of the binding factors at DOI, right? Despite all the challenges and issues that we had, despite the fact that people were working 3 jobs, we still believed in the mission, and we wanted to ensure that our mission areas were able to deliver services to our citizens. And I think that was a critically important piece for those of you still in the federal government moving forward. Leaders, focus on that. It was something that helped a lot of us at times. Look, it doesn't help every day, but on most days, it was one of the things that brought us together and got us focused.
Yeah. And Lou, I guess when you were kind of leading the cyber strategy at DOI, how did you kind of balance, like, communicating effectively with, the technical versus the non-technical audiences during these uncertain times?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll be honest with you, there wasn't a whole lot of technical talk going on during these times. But I mean, in general, I think basically, in my position, generally, I have an organization I manage below, I have an organization above me, I manage up, right? And so from a cybersecurity strategy perspective, luckily for me, I've been in this 20 years doing cyber. And when it first started, CISOs in the organization were generally the smartest, most technical people. And that's, the role has changed over the years, which again is lucky for me because I'm not that person. It's more of a risk executive now, right? It's someone who works with the mission. You're really someone who's enabling the mission to deliver the best possible services they can at the lowest possible risk. It's not your job to just put security capabilities at the perimeter that are going to prevent attacks. I mean, you certainly want to do that, but if they also prevent your mission from being successful, then it's a problem. So your job is that of a risk executive. So in times like this, when we're having challenges, my goal was to just continue to communicate upwards to say, hey, understand, we have these challenges below us with lack of lack of funding, lack of resources to do the work. Here's the risks associated with this. So what is your risk tolerance? At what level of risk are you willing to accept? And I'll work with you guys to make that happen, right? So I think those are the types of conversations. I'm not talking to them about, hey, we need to implement this new, technical solution. It's more about, risks to our mission and what we need to do to make sure it's at the lowest possible risk that they're willing to accept.
Thanks, Lou. Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, you guys all touched on some really great points, and consistent outreach, being yourself and being authentic, how to kind of prioritize and giving clear direction, I think is really great. Some really great takeaways. I wanted to kind of ask the audience a similar question in our next poll. When you're navigating uncertainty, what do you all most value from leadership? Is it clear, honest communication, visible support and accessibility, stability and confidence, empathy and flexibility, quick decision making, etc.? Curious to see what we hear from the audience, and maybe we love to get some of your reactions to that question, or the results, I should say, as they come, and then maybe we can just touch on a little more about the mission, which we've touched on a little bit, but we can go into that in just a second. But you can see the results here. Far and away, clear, honest communication is number one. Any thoughts from the panel on that result?
Yeah, I think it's spot on. And I would just say, again, depending on your audience, if you're a federal agency versus a company, you're going to have different access to tools. But our organization's invested heavily into Gallup's Clifton Strengths and their Q12 engagement tools. And the reason we've really done that is to understand that each teammate and each leader have different skill sets, different strengths, and different approaches. That it's easy to say clear and honest communication, but to each teammate, that means something different. They have different personalities, they learn different, they process information differently. Some are visual learners, some are other type of learners. And to really think through your team that you're leading, what are the different techniques and tactics that you'll use? Being committed to clear and honest communication as a top line value is really important, but how you execute it, you might need different strategies based on the different personalities. People in the office versus people working from home are going to need different strategies. And just to think through how you're communicating and what means. And I think in today's world, you just have to use multiple channels. You can't just rely on sending out an email. You have to really think through the different channels that you're going to use to communicate.
That's great. Thanks, Matt. Lou or Dave, anything to add?
Yeah, actually, there's 2 points this kind of resonates for me with. One is, and Matt hit the nail on the head with making sure you're using A, the right language, and B, the right channels to communicate what you need to communicate to. But recognize you're also in listening mode when you're in that leadership position. Times of uncertainty are the belly button of today, right? Everybody's fixated on it. When you're in a lead position, you can't lose sight of the fact that there's a next week, a next month, a next quarter, a next year, and so forth. So be attuned to the fact that while your teams are dealing with uncertainty based on the communication you provide, you also have to be observant enough to recognize who's that next team lead, who's the next program manager rising to the top, who's that next maybe junior executive that you need to keep your eye on because they really perform under pressure. It's a hard thing to keep a little side tally of when you're wondering, hey, am I even going to have enough cash flow through the department because the budget is non-existent? How do I manage all those aspects? But that's kind of what you sign up for when you get into these positions. It's part of the job. And oh, by the way, the people above you are going to judge you on your ability to do that too. So it kind of matters. But I think you make that part of your communication, not to add stress, but it's the reality. Look, there are some people who are just purpose built to deal with crisis day in and day out. One of them's on a panel with us today. Thanks, Matt. I mean, think about all the stuff you must be on the listening end of, people from, poor Dare County down in North Carolina losing 5 homes a day in Buxton is just not a happy thing to have to deal with. But then again, what happens with that national treasure we call the seashore down there? It's a big ask to figure that out. And the people who are getting their hands dirty down there are the ones who are going to rise to the crop. So, Dare County has their stuff together. They've been through this maybe a time or two before. They have a process and they've got some real winners down there. But to the point, communication through that whole endeavor is key. But communication is bidirectional.
And one of the things I think Lou really talked about risk, and being risk aware and risk averse are two different things. And a lot of the incentives right now are for people to be totally risk averse. Just don't pop your head up. Don't say anything. Don't do anything. And that's not healthy either. So how do you, again, build community? How do you spread the risk? And how do you stay risk aware, but still push innovation, still push things through? And I started my career before Clinton Gore, but I was leading a federal employee group through the Clinton Gore era, where we lost 400,000 of our mid-level managers in the federal service. And I think people forget that a lot of the GS 13, 14, 15s, back in the day, they were called GM. There was a GM schedule and a GS schedule. And the federal government went through a major transformation. Some would argue more orderly and had a long-term study commission. But the federal government has gone through major disruptions. And particularly if you're in federal service, how do you use this to create a better version of these federal agencies and federal programs? And I think that's what we're talking about with our counties, is things aren't going to be the same. Whether FEMA exists or not, we have to plan for it not to be there. We have to plan for disaster management, from mitigation to response to recovery. State and local governments are good at the response. We know how to do the paramilitary immediate 48-hour response. It's the long-term recovery where we've needed the federal government to be a bank and to really bring mass resources. And you could go through each federal agency, but we have to reimagine things. And again, as I said earlier, status quo is not going to be an option. It's just not. And many of our members would say status quo wasn't worth protecting. It wasn't working, and we needed to reimagine it. It doesn't mean they wanted to go this far either. So we gotta find that balance.
Yeah, and if I can jump in, because I 100% agree with you, Matt. Again, working in federal government for as long as I have, I totally agree. We definitely need to improve the efficiency in how we deliver services. Now, whether that starts with the federal employee or starts with the programs that Congress deliver, hey, that's a whole different debate, right? So I won't argue that point. But what I will say is I do agree that we can be much more efficient in how we deliver services. And if I'm going to have some silver lining here, there are opportunities for people still in federal government now to actually do better, particularly in cybersecurity. One of the other things you mentioned, the idea of the head down scenario, right? Where some people are like, whoa, let me just sit back, put my head down, wait for this to pass. We've actually had some successes in getting things done, even in this current administration, by number one, starting by building coalitions, getting people together who want to make improvements, coming up with ideas that, number one, starts with, does it improve security? Yes. Okay, it has to start with that. Does it also help, at least not hamper, but perhaps help with customer experience? Yes. The third thing that is critically important now is, does it improve efficiencies? Can you show a return on investment over time that by implementing this cybersecurity capability, it's going to improve security and also show a return on investment? And if that's the case, we had success before I left on two specific programs where we got the green light to move forward, because we said, look, we're going to improve security, but we are also going to reduce costs by consolidating multiple contracts into one, creating efficiencies and doing better. So with major change, although it's hard, there are also opportunities. And if people who are willing to embrace change and put their neck out a little bit, they can make some significant impacts to the federal government.
No one likes to hear it, but there's a reason it's called work, right?
That's right.
That's great. Yeah, I think you've all made great points. One of the things we've already touched on quite a bit, and one of the things like kind of a overarching theme for today's discussion was like focusing on purpose and staying grounded in the mission. But I think what I hear all of you saying is like, staying focused on the mission doesn't mean just keep doing the same thing over, like keep doing it, but like the mission and like what are you trying to accomplish, and how can we stay focused on that outcome that we're looking for, even though it doesn't necessarily mean doing what we have been doing to achieve that mission in the first place. Anyone else have any other thoughts on like just how to kind of think about that, like how to get folks to focus on the outcome of the mission, and even though there's a lot of things in the way.
Yeah, I'll start just because I get paid $1 every time I say the NACO blueprint, which is our strategic framework. So again, when I mention NACO blueprint, I get $1, but it is our long-term vision, and we've got really concrete written out performance priorities. But we use our objective and key result. We use the OKR process. I think in these climates when everything is on the table, the scale and speed is hard to process, is to break down what you're really trying to do as an organization or a team into milestones. And it's really important to build a culture to celebrate even micro victories, micro progress, to keep people aligned, but to really think through what is your pure focus, how do you get aligned? It's management 101, but it's hard to do when you've got just so many things being thrown at you. And how do you balance playing offense and defense? That particularly for us, the organization I work for, we could easily just be in a defensive posture, trying to save programs, save money. But you also have to have an offensive game. You have to be thinking forward in how you improve services to the community. And if you try and eat that elephant in one bite, you're just going to struggle. And so really getting people to think through what are these small micro milestones where we can keep momentum going, where we can keep positive energy going. It sounds simplistic, but it does work. Plan the work the plan is kind of the saying.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, Dave, you have something?
It's a different vector for me, right? Because I'm on the industry side of the equation most of the time. And kind of thinking through some of the responses I thought I might have to provide. I reached out to a number of my government counterparts and said, look, you're in a shutdown mode. You can't do anything in official capacity right now. What can your small and middle-sized solution providers be doing right now that will make your life easier once you get released from Gen Pop and you're allowed to go back to work, right? And it, first of all, they were like, damn, I didn't think of that. But it's kind of my point. Look, you all have vendors and solution providers out there who, even if you can't go to your job right now or respond to emails and voicemails, they are thinking about you guys. They're thinking about you guys because they started a business with your mission set in mind in the first place. So your survival is theirs. You're linked whether you like it or not. And, especially I find in the defense industrial base, more so than Fed Civ, because it's where I live, that never stops. Doesn't matter what the administration is, doesn't matter what the DoD budget looks like or DOW budget looks like. That mission still has to get taken care of. And if the people who are charged with administering that mission aren't taken care of, it all falls down. So, a couple of the things that really came up, and I think it comes back to a little bit of what Lou was talking about. The one thing the industrial base can help with is efficiencies where the acquisition process is concerned. But the acquisition core and the contracting core don't always see it that way. It's their domain, right? So they aren't as open to some of those suggestions. But when I posed this question to these colleagues of mine, they were like, you know what? Take a look at your pipeline right now, if you're a solution provider to the government, and take a look at everything that's pre-RFP. right? Any RFI, any sources sought, those kind of things, market inquiries, and really do what you can to sharpen those requirements and get them into us. We can't read them right now, but when we get the go button, there's going to be a firestorm of solicitations hitting the street. So the sooner I can get those recommendations in front of my technical people to validate that they're good or not, the more tightly bound these requirements are going to be, which means we're going to be able to deliver to our end user what they're actually asking for, as opposed to something that maybe someday will. And that's an efficiency one way or the other. Either way, the whole way through that communication schism is mission. So I think the whole thing is kind of bound by it. It's the backbone.
Yeah, and again, totally agree, Dave. And I think, moving out of the federal government and working on the private side now in a business where I'm trying to sell to the government, it's definitely been a different perspective for me, right, the last 2 months. But I think one of the things you said, I think it's important is, I worked with small business for years, right? And these were our partners. They helped enable us achieve our mission, right? They were important people that we worked with. Again, over the last several months, in order to create efficiencies, we've let go of a lot of contracts. A lot of these people, are, no longer working. And, it's a different perspective when you look at it, from this side. Now, I will say, again, going to what you've said, it's these contracts, what the federal government's trying to do, what we were trying to do at Interior and I agree with this, is be more efficient in how we deliver contract services, right? Number one, the contracting process, I won't get into that. It's a mess. Someone needs to fix that. I don't know how to do that, but the budget process, that's a whole nother thing. Those are two things, those are constraints on the federal employee that we had to deal with. But as far as how we can leverage the contract community better, it's about consolidation, right? We would have at DOI, we probably had like 13 contracts just for desktop support. Okay, how can we be more efficient? Let's have one contract for desktop. It's as simple as that, and this is, multiply that across the federal government. How many email systems do we have across the federal government? Why can't we all use the same email? They do it at large corporations. So there are ways to get efficiencies in this government, right? And I know that that's being looked at, but the challenge is the budget process and how that works. That's what's preventing us from doing this. Well, politics as well, but the budget process and the acquisition process, it's extremely challenging.
Thanks. That's great. Someone who works for a small business selling into government, these are great insights that I know I can definitely take away as well. And wanted to ask the audience one last question. What's one area where your organization can improve when preparing for future disruptions? So love to hear that from all of you. And then I guess just as we start to, and before I forget, I did want to remind everyone, like there is a Q&A link there. So if anyone from the audience has some other questions they'd like to ask our panelists, please submit them there, and we'll try to save some time for some questions here in just a minute. All right, I guess no questions yet. So as we're winding down, I guess when you think about, kind of collaboration and future proofing, and just as I say that, here's our responses. So pretty spread out, cross-sector collaboration, communication planning, stakeholder mapping and outreach, etc. Any thoughts on these results from the panel?
I kind of like the idea that no one thinks leadership development is important.
They know everything.
I don't disagree, right? I mean, you got to that point for a reason, not that it's not necessary. But I think in a leadership position, that kind of is on you as a person to want to grow and really kind of broaden your footprint as a leader. But I love the top three, all three of them, perfect. And I probably would put them in that exact order.
All right, cool. Yeah, and Dave, I know kind of one of the things we were going to talk about, you help lead large scale innovation communities like Tradewinds, for example, and what have you learned about creating that collaborative environment, whether uncertainty or other times?
This is going to sound so cliche, but it literally is a combination of the three previous topics we covered. It's about being grounded in the mission and making sure everyone within that community or the people who think they should maybe join that community understand what the mission is, who it's going to impact, and what success looks like, right? If you can't define success, maybe you're looking at the wrong place. Secondly, when you're coming in and you're new to a community like that, you don't know where to find the answers. So being clear about what you do and don't know, what left and right boundaries exist, really provide a great pathway for anyone joining that community, whether they're from the government side of the spectrum or industry and academia, to be honest. And then uncertain times. One of the things that I had the privilege of being involved with was building one of the first ever artificial intelligence grounded technical communities. And it was in support of the Chief Data and Artificial Intelligence Office. Back then, when it started, it was called the JAKE. They started this acquisition-based community surrounding another transaction authority agreement. We won't get into that because we'll be here all day. But in any case, the whole point was the government was seeking all technology solution providers, regardless of their scale, regardless of their newness, regardless of the maturity of their solutions. I mean, it's AI. We all know they're not mature yet. So here we go. And so when we took on the program, there were about 2,000 individuals signed up for it, representing a few dozen companies. By the time we got done onboarding the initial tranche, we were well over 14,000 people and over 4,000 organizations. And we just kind of went like this to the government and said, here's your people, mind them well, and they're going to treat you well, kind of a thing, right? And the reason I think we were so successful is that we were absolutely unrelenting in our approachability and our responsiveness. And I think those two things more than any, even if you respond and your response is, I can't help you today, get me on Thursday, it's a response. You've acknowledged that they exist, they feel heard, and more importantly, you've also communicated intent to engage. And those are the things that I think primarily miss a lot, especially when you look at a community where industry is engaging with government, because responsiveness is not always in the equation. Not because the government doesn't want to. Oftentimes they can't. Sometimes there are regulations about that, depending on what you're talking about. Sometimes I just have too much to do, right? Because now I'm doing the 3 jobs instead of 1, right, Lou? So you've got to continually peruse that. At the same time, understand what resources it takes to be able to do that. If you can't plan for those resources to react in that manner, then you're going to fail anyhow, or you're just going to be really tired and unhappy. So plan it out. But I would say more than anything, that responsiveness and that engagement, 2 key things, especially when you're looking to build collaboration. And that's the same when you're looking at teaming partners as well. And I think from a public sector facing standpoint, understand that when you're receiving submissions from a teamed mentality, a whole lot of thought went into that ahead of time before those companies ever put their names on that piece of paper. They coordinated a lot, and they're staking some of their capital in the effort it's going to take for them to pursue your piece of work. You mean something to them, and it's not just profit, it's mission oriented. Otherwise, they wouldn't be responding to your RFI or your RFP in the first place.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Lou, anything you want to add in terms of collaboration? You've worked a long time between agencies and industry, or?
I want to just real quickly, I want to step back to the poll because I also found it interesting and not surprising that leadership development was the lowest. And since this is a call about leadership, I want to put a plug in for leadership development. I'm also like Dave, I'm no longer 25. When I was a young man getting into leadership, I thought, hey, I'm a great leader. I don't need training. You know what I mean? I think we all probably thought that at some point. And particularly for those on this call who've probably been thrust into new leadership positions based on all the changes, invest in yourself. The things we're talking about today, leading change, building coalitions, these are things someone talked me into taking a course, and these are tools you can put in your toolbox that will help you be more effective. I took a class on active listening, Hugh. It turns out I was a terrible listener. It saved my marriage, Hugh. It was a great course. So I just a plug in for some of these younger future leaders out there. Take the training. Even if you are a great natural leader, it will help you. It'll give you more tools in your toolbox to be an effective leader.
Thanks. Well, I'll ask you after the call where you went. Maybe I can. My wife would appreciate that as well.
Yeah, I'll help you out, Hugh.
Please don't tell my wife that course exists.
I think we touched on it a little bit. We did have a couple of quick questions from the audience. I think, one of which is just any other recommendations how industry can better partner with government to navigate these kind of mutual disruptions. Anyone want to take that one?
Yeah, one of the things that I did not mention back then is, and it seems a little obtuse for the question, but you have time now, and we talked. I mentioned taking a look at your pipeline for those things that are forecasted to be coming out. Take the time now to really do your due diligence on two aspects. One, your price to win. You have the time now to go consume the data, and it's out there. Go get it, or find somebody who helps you to do that kind of thing. But really figure out what that looks like, because at the end of the day, while delivery and performance under contract really are the quintessential king of contracting, schedule and price are going to dictate whether you get there. So figure out that price to win now. And along the same lines, especially for those of you who are seeking to win direct support contracts for the government, start answering your staffing needs right now. Those people are wondering who they're going to be working for too. And so you have tools that are available to you, whether that's Indeed, LinkedIn, or what have you, to go start mining who's in those seats right now, because likely they're not necessarily furloughed, so they're answering. Do your homework. That much stuff done ahead of time so informs your strategy when you start writing to the requirements, because now you know what you're really going to have to work with. It's not a hope, and hope is not a plan. So that was the one other little nugget that I got from a particular CO just yesterday. So I would definitely take that one and run. And the last one I'll throw in there is, especially for those who are furloughed, and I'm sure a bunch of people on this call, you're all suffering FOMO too. You want to get back to work, you want to do your job, you can't engage through official channels, but I bet you're scrolling LinkedIn. Reach out to your colleagues and your counterparts, let them know that they're human too. I really think, at the end of the day, like I said, we're awash in this sea of technology that serves humans, so go be a damn human and interact, right? Take it on and let them know that they're thinking about you. So that's it.
Thanks, Dave. That's great. We only have a couple of minutes left. I just want to give Matt and Luke any other last minute thoughts on any key takeaways or lessons you'd like to share with our audience as we wrap up.
I would just say, again, I'm here. We have 25 county administrators that run the largest counties in the country, from 10 million population to 1 million. And we visited a corporate partner yesterday and studied the future of the workforce in the AI world. And the number one trait that kept coming up was agility, and really staying agile, and the importance of anticipatory learning and really keeping your skills fresh is key. But from a leadership perspective, I think it's really important that we be kind to ourselves, meaning when you speak to yourself and you have those conversations in your own head, that progress is more important than perfection right now. As a leader, if you're trying to be perfect, it's just not going to happen. It's never going to happen. But as you're being kind to yourself, just stay accountable and don't just keep making excuses. But it's a tough time to be a leader. It's exhausting. You got to take care of yourself so you can take care of others. It's like the airplane message, put your mask on before you put on your seatmate's mask. And I think it's just really important. So many folks are trying to solve everybody else's problems, and you just can't do it. I think focusing on setting the culture and the conditions for your team's success is really important. And as I said earlier, just celebrate the smallest wins that you can. Keep people motivated, and you can't celebrate it enough right now.
Thanks so much, Matt. Lou, any last minute thoughts before we wrap up?
Just echoing slightly what Matt said, yeah, take care of yourself as a leader. You're going to make mistakes just like everyone else. You're going to have your bad days. I'm sure there are people in your life who can help you with that. And always make sure that you're consistently letting your team know the value they bring to the table, right? I think that's the main thing. You can't let them know, hey, am I going to get riffed this week? Am I going to have a job in 2 weeks? What you can do is say, you know what? I understand the value you bring to this organization. You help deliver this mission, and I will support you and advocate for you as long as we're both here.
That's great. Thanks so much, Lou. And we're out of time. That was a really quick hour, but I really appreciate all of your insights. Dave, Matt, Lou, been a great session. I think everyone in the audience, I hope you have some great takeaways to bring back to your organizations. And just want to thank you all again for joining today. And thank you all who have logged in and attended. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day.